All right, so I want to do a video about how to buy makeup, where to buy it, what to pick, how to pick it, because I get so many questions about it. And yesterday I went to go pick up a few things at the drugstore that I needed that I'd use every day whenever I'm doing makeup. And I thought to myself, you know what, I'm going to buy a whole look. And I'm going to do an expensive makeup look versus an inexpensive makeup look, so you can see how you can recreate it with inexpensive makeup. And then I thought to myself, that might be an interesting idea, but then I realized I'd already done that video. But in the process of trying to buy the inexpensive makeup and create a whole look, it was a total nightmare. I now realize why women who just specifically shop in a drugstore or a discount store look so bad. They can't find anything. I was in there for an hour and a half and I came home with the wrong stuff. Oh my gosh, I even bought the wrong eyeliner. The eyeliner I bought has sparkle in it, for God's sakes. I had to borrow someone else's eyeliner to even create, because that is one of the products that I think you can save money on. And so what this video really turned into was where you can save money on products and where I don't think you can save money on products, because I do think that a lot of women want to know that, because you don't want to spend, or a lot of women don't want to spend all their money on everything, and they want to know where they can skimp and where they need to spend the bulk of their budget. So what this video is going to be about is making your best purchases where you can save money and where not to save money. Keep in mind that when you're choosing to invest in a product versus saving on a product, that product just has more expensive ingredients, which in turn helps that product last longer. So keep that in mind when choosing products that are more expensive. Those are your products that are going to last longer, that are going to be more important. For instance, foundation, concealer, things that create the perfect canvas. Things like lipstick, they don't need to last longer. You're going to eat them off anyway. They're going to be things you change throughout the day. So those are things you need to think about when choosing where to save money and where to spend more of your budget. Okay, so when we're talking about ingredients again, just like in your things like blush, in your less expensive line or your less expensive product lines, again, you've got to think about the size of the shimmer. It's going to be not chopped up as fine as in a more expensive product line. So think of that as well, because the shimmer particle in a less expensive blush will not be as forgiving to your skin texture, your fine lines, your pores, as it might be in a more expensive line. So when buying a shimmery, sparkly blush in a less expensive line, it could draw attention to things you don't want to see. So if it were me and I was at your drugstore or your discount store and I was buying a less expensive blush, I would lean towards matte to be more safe and to get a better effect with my blush. So think about things like that in being sure that you're getting the best product that's going to work best for you. Also keep in mind that when you're choosing foundation, which is one of the reasons why I think you should invest the majority of your budget in things like foundation and concealer, the pigments are going to be nicer, they're going to give you better payoff, they're going to give you better coverage with less weight and less texture. So I would spend the bulk of my budget on my foundation, my concealer, my powder. That way everything you put on top of it looks more fabulous and the canvas looks perfect. So I would say if your budget is limited, that is where I'd spend the bulk of my money. Second to that, I would spend money on my eyeshadows because they will last all day, they'll stay truer, the color and the pigments will be brighter. That would be where I'd spend the second amount of my budget. And from there on, I would think that from there on, all the rest of the products are less likely to be as big of a deal. Eyeliner, you could go cheap, it's not going to matter. Now, if you tend to water, they make good waterproof formulas in less expensive and more expensive. For me, bronzer, I would tend to spend a little more money on because you're going to get a better pigment payoff as well. Blush, you could do inexpensive or expensive. Again, though, consider lastability. That's another thing that would last a little bit longer if you did do more expensive. But again, for me, I do tend to go a little cheaper on that if I'm going to be on a budget. And then lips, I'd say all day, every day, less expensive, less expensive, less expensive. Some of the ones I use the most are a less expensive on that as well. I'm doing an everyday look on Katie. She can wear it anywhere, to the mall, to school, wherever, meet friends, for lunch. Just something easy to wear, something she can do quickly, not a lot of thought. Her basic look every day. Now, of course, before I started, I prepped her skin. We all know that prepping is so very important. I moisturized really, really well. I did eye cream underneath her eye, and then I did foundation primer, because if we do not prep the skin first, then nothing we do is going to go on top of that well. Now, do we spend a lot of money on prep, on what we use to prep, or do we save money? You know, I think that could go both ways. I think your moisturizer is what you prefer. I know that there's people that have gotten great results from inexpensive moisturizers as well as expensive moisturizers. I think the moisturizer that works best for you is the one you get the best result from. If you find that you get the best result from a more expensive moisturizer, then you use a more expensive one. I think that there are great less expensive ones as there are great more expensive ones. Primer and eye cream, I would think, would be ones that I would spend more money on versus your all-over moisturizer, especially primer. I tend to not skimp on primer because it really does make a difference. Originally, when, about 12 years ago, maybe even longer than that, I don't want to age myself. When someone first talked to me about makeup primer, they tried to sell me makeup primer, and I was like, no, whatever. It's just another layer. And they put foundation primer on one hand and not on the other. They powdered both hands. I could see all my fine lines in the hand that had no foundation primer and none on the one that did have foundation primer. Foundation primer makes everything look smoother and more perfect, so I would not skimp on foundation primer. It would make all the difference in the world in how much more flawless your makeup looks. Now, as most of you know, if you watched any videos, I like to paint the forehead and the eyelids first. I'm going to conceal the eyelids and then go back and clean up after I've done my shadow and have a flawless underneath. Now, I'm using a whipped cream foundation. It has a nice, great pigment to it, so it has a low viscosity with a lot of coverage. So we don't really see it sitting on our skin. Now keep in mind, on primers there's two types. There's a gel type and a silicone base. I used a gel type. They both work great. It's just your preference. I prefer the gel type versus the silicone base. Either one will work. And then keep in mind that always it's better to use any kind of primer, inexpensive or expensive, than none at all. Now I'm going to powder. Again, I've invested my money in my powders, my concealers, my foundations, and my tools. Now, with your tools, you're going to invest whatever your budget allows. Always remember that the better the hairs on your brushes, the better your result is going to be. Also remember that when you're using a cream, a synthetic bristle always works best, and when you're using a powder, a natural bristle always works best. So I would say whatever your budget allows, afford the best brushes it allows you. There are everyday better and better synthetic brushes, but I personally feel that with a powder product, a natural bristle always works better. And the shape of your brushes makes a huge difference for the purpose of what each one is doing. And since I'm psychotic about my brushes. So be sure, if you really want to know about the shape of each brushes, what they do, the hairs, why they're shaped the way they are, why they do what they do, be sure and go to the Academy. We have a video specifically for just that. Okay, so I'm doing brow pencil next. Now, this is my thing with brow pencil. I could go either way, cheap or expensive. But I have to say, I shopped for an hour and a half yesterday, and there was not a decent blonde in the entire store. So I would say it would depend on the color. If you can find a decent, less expensive, more affordable brow pencil that has a good texture, go for it. But I could not find a decent blonde, so I'm having to use a more expensive on Katie. So I was not able to save money because Katie's blonde. A good texture means it's not going to be too waxy or too heavy. Now I'm going back over my pencil with a brush, my number one, blending it out. Little feathery hair-like strokes, just like I did with a pencil. Now I'm going back over my pencil with brow powder, just to make it look more natural. This is a option, not a have to. But Katie has a bald spot right here, and I want to get a more even color application. And I always feel like I can do that better with powder. I'm going to use a matte beige highlight using my number 22, applying it with my number 22 brush to the lid and the brow bone. Now remember, I decided to go with more expensive eyeshadows because of lastability and blendability. Now I would say that we could mix less expensive and more expensive with eyeshadows. And on your highlight shade, you could go less expensive because it's going to have less pigment and it needs to last or stay truer. It doesn't have to stay as true as long. So with your highlight shade, you could go less expensive, and your midtone and your contour shade more expensive because they're going to need to stay truer longer. So you could mix those as well. So first doing a matte beige, and then I'm going to go over it with a shimmer champagne. Just on the lid. And that's because I like, and it's also on trend, for the lid to be a little bit more sparkly and shiny than the entire eye. Now, I'm going to curl my lashes and do my first layer of mascara. I know that some of you think this is weird to do it now, but I cannot see what's happening until I start to see some lashes. This is somewhere where I think we can definitely save some money, is on mascara. I do not see the point in spending a ton of money on mascara. Mascara is mascara, mascara is mascara. What you're really buying when you're buying mascara is a brush. So you have to find the brush that works the best for you. My favorite just happens to be really cheap. What I would say you can't skimp on is your eyelash curler. The reason you can't skimp on eyelash curlers is because you need ones with great rubber pieces and that are shaped correctly. Otherwise, they're not going to curl as well. One of my favorite mascaras, look, yeah, just happens to be a cheaper one. Now for me, I love this particular mascara because the wand is so skinny and small, and I can get all the way in at the base of the lashes and really get mascara on those lashes. So if any of you have watched very many of my videos, you know that I believe that you have three options when choosing mascara, color-wise. You can choose black, black, or black. And if you don't like that, you could always choose black. Because the entire purpose of mascara is to define the eyes, and in my opinion, nothing other than black is going to do that. So, those are your options, black, black, or black. No, you could choose brown, but it's not going to do it that much for you. And so that starts to give me some definition so I can see what's going on. Now, of your three eyeshadow choices, your highlight, your midtone, and your contour, the most important of your three shades is your midtone. Because your midtone starts to define and shape your entire eye. If you have to only spend money on one of your three shades, make it your midtone. It's the boring shade. It's the shade that most of you don't even care about, but it's a constant in your looks. It's the one that y'all hear me talk about time and time and time again about how important your midtone is. I would buy a less expensive highlight and contour shade and spend all my eyeshadow budget on nicer, higher quality midtones because it starts to create all the shape in your eyelid. It is the most important of your 3 shades. Now, because we're just doing an everyday look, I'm just going to use a nice matte taupe on Katie to start to create the shape of her eye. Taking my number 11 brush, I'm going to start to create that shape. And remember, the number 11 is pointed to where it's blending and applying color all at the same time. We just start to create that crease, bring it up into the brow so the brow doesn't sit up there by itself. And for a lot of people, they will just do a highlight and a midtone and some mascara, little eyeliner, and go about their day. But you can see why having a nice pigmented shadow is so important on this color, because even though it's boring and not exciting, you're getting a result. If it was less expensive and didn't have a lot of pigment to it, we wouldn't be getting the same result. It wouldn't blend as easily. And this shadow, or this shade of shadow, even though it's there, we don't really want to see it. We just want the effect of what it does without it being a major focus. Because what it's doing is it's shaping that eye for us. It's the unsung hero of our eyeshadow, our eye makeup. I bet if I opened up every girl in this room's makeup kit, they would not, most of you wouldn't have a midtone. Would Katie have a midtone? At least you're honest about it. And you can see I'm bringing it all the way in and all the way up to the brow. And you can see how it starts to create shape to the lid. Going back over it with my number 28 brush just to blend it out. Always keeping it clean with no color. Then taking my number 30 and some midtone, and I'm going to close in that outer corner with a little bit of that midtone. Today's your stomach. Blending it out. All right, you can see how it's starting to define the lid and starting to give it shape, and that's just your midtone. That's the boring shade. Now, I want to start to define at the lash line. I like to apply my liner after my midtone and before my accent so that I can blend it out when I'm applying my accent. So, now remember, this is an area I think you can save money. I have to say though, I bought this eyeliner yesterday, looked at it, read it, thought, okay, it's black eyeliner. I got it here. It has freaking sparkle in it. It's impossible to buy makeup at the drugstore. So I had to borrow one from one of our lovely ladies here today. Before I do that though, I'm going to take my number 41 brush and some black eyeshadow, and I'm going to push some color into the lash line. Look down for, yeah. I like to push color into the lash line to make the lashes look thicker and to make sure I get color right at the base of the lashes first. Okay, I will say one of the advantages to drugstore or department store versus drugstore is you can test the makeup at the department store. I will say this though, ladies, at any and every drugstore, everything you buy is returnable. So if you get it home and it sucks, you can return it. Most of you do not know that. So always keep in mind, if you get it home and it's not right or you don't like it, return it. Now you can't wait 6 months and return it. It can't be half used and you hate it and return it. But if you get it home, you try it out, you decide it's not your shade, it is returnable. I mean, if it's CVS, they will. If it's Walgreens, they will. If it's Target, they will. And you can see how that's starting to define her lash line. Now I'm going to line her lash line with my inexpensive liner, because this is definitely an area where I can save money. Keep in mind, find the brand that you feel like goes on the best. This ain't it. Maybe it's just because it's so sharp. Hold on. No, that helped a little bit. Okay, keeping it as close to the lash line as possible. Now we're going to take our number 30 and we're going to start to add some depth right at the lash line, our darker shade. Blending it out with our number 28. Remember, you cannot blend and apply with the same brush. So we apply it with one brush. Getting the color where we want it. And we blend it out with the other. All right, so we've done our contour shade. All right, Mikey, I'm gonna put some lashes on her.
Okay.
All right, so now I'm gonna clean up using some eye cream where I've dripped underneath. All that I dripped, so it stays perfect. You can see what dripped. Now foundationing from there down. With the palest foundation they make. Now, with your sponges and your tools for applying foundation, you can go as inexpensive or expensive as you want. Now, of course, Beauty Blender costs what it costs. Your cleanup sponges, they can be less expensive or more expensive. I will say that the texture is going to be different. If you're just using them to clean up and blend out your primers and your moisturizers, cost does not matter. Go cheap. If you're using them to apply your foundation, I would say invest in whatever your budget allows, because that's what you're applying with. And believe it or not, that texture is going to matter. But keep in mind whether it has latex or not latex. And if you're allergic to latex or you have a problem with latex, it doesn't matter because all non-latex are cheap. So you get to do cheap no matter what. Look up. Using my brush number 54. So I can get my concealer really up close. We're going to set. Okay, so I'm using my number 76 and I'm setting underneath her eye with just a translucent highlight powder. Again, this is something I would not skimp on because we're setting the palette. Since Katie is so pale, I'm going to go ahead and set the translucent powder everywhere as to not deepen her skin. And two, I concealed in a lot of little areas around, and we don't want the powder to deepen where I concealed. Now I'm going to take my number 13 brush and my mid-tone. Again, this is the color I would not skimp on in my eyeshadow. Look up. And I'm going to go right along that lower lash line for definition. Now, since it's an everyday look, that's all the definition I'm going to do along the lower lash line because I want to keep it pretty natural. I'm going to highlight the inside corner of the lower lash line with my matte cream. Look up. Brush. With my number 14 brush. Just to kind of open the outer corner of the eye up. Brush off any shadow that might have dripped. To another layer of mascara. Look up for me. Doing mascara along the lower lashes. Again, you can see why I love this wand. Now, bronzer. Again, I would not skimp on bronzer because it has to last all day. So your pigment makes a huge difference. Plus, I find that less expensive bronzers tend to be too orange and splotchy when they go on. So I would say if you can't, or if you can afford it, don't skimp on your bronzer. I'm using my brush number 73 to bronze Katie with. Now, because of Katie's skin tone, I used a pink-based bronzer so that it would definitely not go too orange on her. And of course, a little bit along the side of the nose with my number 11 brush. To contour the nose, give it shape, blending out my bronzer.
Looks so big.
Making what?
Make it not look so big.
Oh yeah, because you have a huge, big old fat face.
I know.
Oh, whatever. Now, an area I think we can definitely save on is blush. Smile for me. Just using a great little apricot. Give her a nice little flush. One of the crazy things I noticed yesterday when I was shopping for blush, same brand, same color, name two different things in two different packagings. It's like, really? No wonder women are so confused when they shop for makeup at the drugstore. They don't know what's what. How do they do it?
Brush.
Again, number 73. Brush, blending it out with my powder brush. Another number 73. One for blush, one for powder. And then a place where every woman can definitely skimp is lip. Taking a nice nude pencil. Defining and filling in slightly. Remember where your lip pencil will help it last longer.
What's important in a lip pencil?
Important in a lip pencil, I would say the thing to think about most is true to color when you put it on, glides on smoothly, stays on long. Most important for me is the color. And making sure when it goes on, it's true to color.
Brush.
Using brush number 80, lip brush just to blend it out. And then we are going to use we're just going to use a nice peachy gel formula lipstick to add a little color. Always remember that you're going to get a more precise application if you apply it with a brush, and it's going to last longer than straight out of a tube. But I ain't stupid, and I don't think most women are going to use a brush. I do think, though, that if you're going to line, you've got to have a brush to blend out that liner. You can't just put lipstick right on top of the liner. And then I'm just going to go over it with a nice nude gloss. especially since Katie's lips are a little dry.
Inexpensive or expensive for the gloss?
Inexpensive, you can totally do inexpensive. Okay, so here's the deal. When you're shopping, you have to make the decision. You have to decide where you're going to invest your money. You have to decide your budget. You have to decide where to spend and how to spend. I would just say, whatever you can afford, buy the best that you can afford. That's going to be whatever it is. So just invest the best you can where you can. I would say invest the most you can in your foundation, your powder, and your concealer, because that's the palette and everything you put it on top of. Next most important I would invest in is your mid-tone shadow, because it's the most important of the 3 shadows. From there, your other shadows I would spend the most money on. Then bronzer. Everything else from there doesn't have to be expensive. Eyeliner could be less expensive. Lips definitely can be less expensive because you're just going to eat them off throughout the day. You're going to change them. That's something that goes in and out of fashion. You never know. If you've got a shade that needs to last, that's a dark shade, that's a dramatic shade, I might invest in that shade. Although I have to say, my favorite red lipstick is a Maybelline shade. So even with your more dramatic shades, it may be a less expensive shade. But on a shade that is intense and might want it to last, you might consider that as well. Your blush, another thing you could save money on. Mascara, it's all in the wand. Make your decision there. I happen to love a cheaper mascara wand. So spend where you find you get the best bang for your buck. But you've got to make sure you invest in your foundation, your concealer, and your powder. That is the most important thing to invest in. Also consider ingredients, and when you're buying some of your products at the drugstore or your discount store, think about shimmer when you're buying your blushes, things that could be not as high quality and that might be detrimental to your effect at the end. Matte is always safe. If you're unsure, just stick to matte shades and they will be safer for you. Okay, so we're gonna take Katie away, finish off her hair, and come back with her final look.